Alright, we are live, ladies and germs. And the Styrian Grand Prix was poop. It honestly felt a lot like the Monaco Grand Prix in that same respect. Let's get into it. This is the fuel. Wrong button. Anyways, welcome to your afternoon edition of The Fuel, where today we are going to be talking about the 2021 Styrian Grand Prix from the Red Bull Ring. This is our 97th edition of The Fuel. Title of today's episode, Red Bull gives you wings! This race was fucking trash. It was boring as fuck. I mean, Max Verstappen led flag to flag, started on pole, and was not passed for the entirety of today's race. It's starting to look more and more like a Max Verstappen World Championship this year, unless Mercedes can really turn it around. But not really much to it than that. A couple of headlines that did come out of it, though. There were reports that Lewis Hamilton, his contract status, he is actually in contract negotiations with Mercedes. And apparently one of the things that he wants is that he wants Bottas to remain at Mercedes as well. That's kind of interesting. Considering over the past couple of weeks that Bottas has been at odds with the Mercedes head honchos based on their race strategies and shit. I think today might be a little bit different, considering the fact that he did finish on the podium. Barely, but he did finish on the podium. And the fact that Hamilton actually wants him to stay at Bottas is a pretty big deal. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Much like with some of the other stories from NASCAR earlier, this is a developing story. One thing that is confirmed, though, is that there is a replacement for the Singapore Grand Prix. There was some speculation that the United States would get a second Grand Prix to replace it, but as it turns out, they will replace the Singapore Grand Prix with the Turkish Grand Prix, which is at the Intercity Istanbul circuit, I believe. And that'll take place at the beginning of October. So the US will remain at just one Grand Prix this year. Of course, they'll have two next year with the addition of the Miami Grand Prix at the Hard Rock Stadium circuit in Miami. So that'll be interesting to see. But that's all the headlines that we got coming into this race. Let's go ahead and get this over with, because I just woke up. I overslept a little bit from my nap, so I just want to get this done and over with and then get ready for the second Pocono race, which starts in about an hour. So Max Verstappen started from the pole. This was a 71 lap race. Why 71 laps? Because this is one of the shortest tracks on the circuit. It's only like 2.6 miles in length. So as a result, it's only a 69 second lap. Or about 68, 69 second lap. Verstappen gets a good clean start. We had some shenanigans shit go on the first lap. Leclerc gets a damaged front wing and has to pit to have it replaced. And Gasly was the one who made contact with Leclerc, which cut down his left rear tire. He then makes contact with Giovinazzi in turn 3. Of course, he didn't really have much control over it, as well as Nicholas Latifi, which cut his tire down. The tire comes apart and causes suspension damage, which eliminates Gasly from the race on the very first lap. Tough break for him. He had been scoring some decent finishes this year. Verstappen was already up almost 10 seconds on third place Lando Norris, like 7 laps in. Red Bull was on it in this race. Perez gets by Norris for third in turn 3, and Bottas gets by for fourth. At this point, it was just like... One thing of note, though, was George Russell was up to 8th in the Williams, and it was looking like he was going to get his first points finish driving for Williams, but had pneumatic pressure problems on his car, which eventually led to his retirement on lap 39. So that was a tough break because he had a pretty decently quick car. Perez comes in for his lone pit, well, what would have been his lone pit stop, but has a 4.8 second pit stop. Pretty slow for the Red Bull guys, which allows Bottas to come in. Mercedes has a much faster pit stop, a 2.6 second pit stop, and that allows him to jump Perez for the third position. And this would force Perez into a different strategy later on down the road, which nearly works out for him. Excuse me. You can tell I just woke up from my nap. Hamilton then pits on lap 29 for fresh hard tires, and Verstappen pits one lap later, comes in with the lead, and comes out with the lead. Norris pits for fresh hards on lap 32. Of course, I was at this point. Russell retired from the race on lap 39 with pneumatic pressure problems. Verstappen and Hamilton start lapping the back half of the field. Out of this 20-car field, there were only 4 left on the lead lap. And surprise, surprise, it was the Red Bulls and the Mercedes cars. Shows you what the battle's going to be all season long. Carlos Sainz was the longest one to stay out. He finally pits on lap 42 for fresh tires. Kimi Räikkönen and Leclerc make contact, damaging Räikkönen's front wing. Sainz gets by Stroll for 6th. Perez starts closing in on Bottas for the final podium spot, but then Red Bull decides to bring him in on lap 55 for fresh mediums, which was an interesting strategy. Of course, he's going to be much faster on the mediums, and he was catching them, but it just wasn't enough time. Leclerc gets by Tsunoda for 9th. Perez sets fastest lap, taking it away from Hamilton, at least temporarily. Leclerc gets by Stroll for 7th, so a good recovery by Leclerc after that lap 1 schmozzle. And then Mercedes decides to pit Hamilton with 2 laps to go. Reason being is that the race was already lost. I mean, he was like 17 seconds back at this point. And because he had such a lead over his teammate, which was almost half a minute at this point, they decided, you know what, let's go and get fresh softs and steal the fastest lap back to get that bonus point. And Verstappen goes flag to flag at the Red Bull ring. Hamilton takes 2nd with the fastest lap, which he got on the final lap. The final lap was a bit stressful for Bottas because Perez was right on his heels. And I guarantee you, if there was one more lap, Perez would have got him, for sure. But Bottas does his job and barely holds Perez at bay to take the final spot on the podium. This was a very boring Grand Prix, but I mean, when you look at what we saw the last 2 races at Azerbaijan and Paul Ricard, F1 was due for a boring race, and this was it. And the crappy thing is, they're going back to this track next week for the 4th of July race. So, yeah, not the most exciting race in the world, I'll tell you that much. It wasn't as boring as Monaco, because at least with this one there was some passing, but I mean, it's not really saying much. I mean, just look at some of these stats. Look at these stats right here. There were 0 overall lead changes because Super Max Verstappen led flag to flag, which means there's 0 pure lead changes. On a plus note, there were also no safety cars. This went clean and green to the end, despite all of the shenanigans that we saw in this race. So, let's do the race results, point standings, constructor standings, and we'll be done with the F1 review. Just like that. Like I said, not a whole lot happened in this race. So, race results, of course, Max Verstappen with the win. Wins by 35.7 seconds. Of course, that's a little bit inflated because Hamilton pit on coming to the white flag. to get fresh soft. Well, 2 laps ago actually to get fresh softs. Valtteri Bottas finishes on the podium just half a second in front of Sergio Perez, and those were the only 4 cars on the lead lap, and they're Red Bull, Hondas, and Mercedes. Finishing in 5th position is Lando Norris, who's certainly proving his worth at McLaren. Then you have the 2 Ferraris of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc right behind him. Good recovery by Leclerc to finish in the points after what happened on lap 1. Lance Stroll for Aston Martin comes home in the 8th position. Fernando Alonso for Alpine in 9th. And then Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri rounds out the top 10 and gets the final championship point. Drivers standings. I believe we're 8 races into the season, if memory serves me correctly. Let me double check just to be sure, because I'm still kind of half asleep a little bit. I want to make sure. Season. Yep, Styrian Grand Prix was the 8th round of the season. So we're 8 rounds in, 15 to go. Driver standings. Max Verstappen extends his championship lead. It is now 18 points over Lewis Hamilton, I believe. That doesn't seem right. For some reason that just doesn't seem right to me, but let me double check. Grand Prix. Yeah, I guess it is. 18-point lead for Max Verstappen over Lewis Hamilton. Sergio Perez in 3rd with 96 points. Lando Norris in 4th. Valtteri Bottas closes in on Norris for the 4th position in the points with his 3rd place effort. Charles Leclerc in 6th. His teammate Carlos Sainz in 7th. And you have Pierre Gasly, who didn't score any points, Daniel Ricciardo, who didn't score any points, and Sebastian Vettel, who also did not score any points here today at the Styrian Grand Prix. Constructor standings. Red Bull Racing now has a 40-point advantage over Mercedes. McLaren has a 12-point advantage over their rivals in Ferrari. And then you have AlphaTauri with a 2-point advantage for 5th over the Aston Martin team. And then Alpine Renault with 31 points in the 7th position. Alfa Romeo still has just 2 championship points. And Williams and Haas still yet to score any points in this season. As for my final rating for the Styrian Grand Prix, it was poop. I mean, it might as well have been Monaco on steroids, at least with a little bit of passing. So, my final rating for the Styrian Grand Prix is a 2 on the fuel gauge. 2 out of 10. This race was boring as fuck. I mean, at least there wasn't any, like, real controversies or anything of that nature. And the race went green to the end, but there was just nothing really of interest other than maybe the final battle for the podium spot between Bottas and Perez, but that little battle is not going to save 70 laps of just boring racing. And as difficult it is for me to say it, Formula 1 was due. I mean, for a bad race. I mean, the last 2 races were pretty damn good, all things considered, and this one was just run of the mill. So there you go. But that's going to do it for this edition of The Fuel. I may or may not do the second Pocono race later on tonight. We'll see. Depends on my mood, I guess. But thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the Packer Man signing out. See you later.
Thank you for watching tonight's video. Be sure to like and subscribe, you rats!